If you underwent this procedure any time before the mid-19th century, you were already dying or already dead. For 2,000 years, a cesarean section was an autopsy performed on a living woman, an attempt to save the child only after the mother was lost. The path to making this surgery survivable didn't require a complex medical breakthrough. It required surgeons to stop ignoring a single fatal mechanical mistake they had been making for centuries. For almost the entirety of recorded history, undergoing this operation meant an almost 100% guarantee of death for the mother. This myth is often attached to the face of Julius Caesar, but his birth, by this method, is a biological impossibility. His mother, Aurelia, lived for decades after his birth, in an era where the surgery had no survivors. The name actually stems from the Lex Caesaria, a Roman religious law. It mandated that if a pregnant woman died, the fetus had to be removed so the mother could be buried according to religious custom. In this context, the procedure was a civic and religious obligation to the dead, not a medical intervention for the living. To understand why the surgery killed almost everyone, imagine a 19th century surgeon cutting through your abdominal wall and the wall of the uterus itself to remove the baby. The fatal flaw was what the surgeon did next. Nothing. Based on the false belief that the organ would naturally contract and seal itself, surgeons routinely left the uterine incision completely unsutured after the birth. This left a large, actively bleeding wound inside the abdomen. Without sutures or antiseptics, blood poured into the cavity, making death from hemorrhage or sepsis nearly certain. The removal of the baby wasn't the inherent killer. The mother died because surgeons simply left the internal wound open. In July of 1826, a British Army surgeon in Cape Town named James Barry defied local religious advice to operate on a woman in the midst of an obstructed labor. 5 decades before the technique existed to make this reliably repeatable, Barry successfully saved both the mother and the baby, a result almost unheard of in the English-speaking world at the time. Barry achieved this while hiding a significant personal secret. Born Margaret Ann Bulkley, Barry adopted a male identity to gain admission to medical schools that strictly barred women from the profession. Some biographers believe Barry's lived experience with female anatomy provided a practical insight into labor and the physical body that no other practicing surgeon possessed at the time. While Barry's 1826 success was a landmark of individual surgical skill, it remained a miraculous exception to the lethal mechanical odds of the 19th century. A systemic fix finally arrived in 1882, when German obstetrician Max Sanger addressed the specific technical failure that had been killing patients for 2,000 years. Sanger's solution was conceptually simple. He used silver wire to stitch the uterine wound closed. He stopped waiting for the body to manage the bleeding and began controlling it at the source. This technique, paired with the antiseptic principles pioneered by Joseph Lister, finally solved the twin problems of internal hemorrhage and infection. By identifying and closing the overlooked internal wound, Sanger transformed the cesarean section from a desperate last resort into a genuinely survivable surgery. With the addition of modern anesthesia, blood transfusions, and antibiotics, maternal mortality from the procedure in well-resourced settings has dropped to a small fraction of 1%. This chart shows how that safety has changed medical practice. While the World Health Organization identifies an ideal rate of 10 to 15%, global cesarean rates have climbed to over 30% in many countries. The debate has now inverted. Today, medical authorities are not questioning whether the surgery can save lives, but whether its high level of safety has led to it being used more often than is genuinely necessary. The procedure has traveled from a Roman law meant for the dead to a miraculous surgical gamble in an 1826 operating room. It took a single silver suture in 1882 to bridge that gap, creating the foundation for the most common major surgery performed today. January Science tells the story behind the science, one disease at a time. Subscribe for the next one.